Hi everyone, Sharon here from the Trainers Training Company with today's Trainer Talk Insider, and I'm here with Neil Shorney. Good to see you, Neil.
Good to see you, Sharon.
Yeah, really, thank you for doing this. It's really, really nice to be able to spend some time with you, chatting about your business, chatting about your journey, your challenges, trainer talk, all of that stuff. So first things first, so for people who don't know you, who are you? What do you do? And how long have you been in business?
Okay, so yeah, my name's Neil Shorney. I'm kind of a sales trainer, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. So I've got unusual background, which is I spent most of my career as a salesperson and sales manager, but much of it for project management consultancy. So as an organization, we would help businesses around the world to manage their projects more effectively. And I spent the last 6 years splitting my time between managing a sales team and being a PM consultant. And these people have got very different skill sets. So salespeople very good at using their personality to influence others, tell engaging stories and that sort of thing. Probably not so good at doing things strategically and predictably and measurably. Um, Project managers kind of the opposite. Maybe not so strong on the interpersonal influencing skills, but very good at having a long-term goal and knowing the steps they need to go through to get there. So what I do these days is I bring those two skill sets together for three reasons. The first one is to help salespeople to close more complex deals. So deals where there's maybe a very long sales cycle, multiple decision makers. I give them project management skills to help them to look at risk and next steps and that sort of thing. Increasingly giving commercial skills to project delivery teams because they tend to own better relationships with customers in solution focused businesses to help them to use those relationships to win more business for their organizations. And then also working with leaders to reduce some of the conflict that sometimes is between those two teams and bring them together. So I say I'm a sales trainer, but it's a bit of a
It's
bit of a
definitely more
niche.
complicated than that.
It is. It
Very,
is.
very, very niche. And sorry, how long did you say you'd had your business?
Since 2011.
2011. Okay, so
But
quite,
full
quite,
time since
yeah,
2017.
yeah,
So
quite a few
I
years
did
now.
it part time
Right.
for 6 years.
So, what did you do before you became? I know you told us a little bit, but what did you do before you became a freelance trainer and business owner? Kind of what inspired you to set up on your own?
So what inspired me to become a trainer was the very first time I attended a training course, which was back in 2000, 2001, just after I joined the project management consultancy. I went on a training course about how to manage projects, and it was run by a fabulous trainer who sadly is no longer with us, called Pete Dunton. And he was like an ex-IBM employee. And I was looking at his profile before we went there, and I thought, this is really boring. But he turned up he was ex-IBM, but his hobby was Morris dancing. And he turned up with all the costume except the bells, no bells in the room. And he made it so fun. We spent 3 days working through a moving house project, thinking about some of our stakeholders being our dog, the width of the driveway gate, that sort of thing. And we looked at all the things that could go right or wrong in a project. And I thought this is a really fun thing to do, explaining what is essentially a very dry topic in a way that had people laughing and joking and moving around and um, that sort of thing. So I looked at him doing that and I thought, not with the costume, but I thought I could do that. That would be good fun. And then I spent the next decade trying to move into it. It was a long-term strategic thing.
Yeah. You never graduated to the Morris dancing costume, though.
But I'm a musician too, and I sometimes take my little banjo with me. That has a place in their
Oh,
training course sometimes.
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So you told me about what inspired you to be a trainer to move. And it's interesting, isn't it, how so many people that I've come across and that I talk to just kind of like fall into it. It's not like something that you're at school and you kind of go, oh, I'm going to be a trainer when I leave school. People kind of like find their way in, don't they? So what inspired you to actually set up your own business? Because it's quite a big step.
Yeah, and I don't know. You're asking me to think a while back now. Um, I guess what inspired me to do it was to have a little bit more control over what I did. So I said it took me a decade to become this. So I I attended training because I thought that would be fun to do. I learned a bit more about it. I said to my boss, we did training as an organization as well. I said to my boss, I said, Alan, can I become a trainer? He said, no, you can't, because in order to become a trainer, you need experience in what we're doing, which I had a bit of, but not enough. You need to have experience training and so on. So I then re-engineered my sales team a little bit, taking people who had no previous experience rather than experienced salespeople, because I knew then it means I could train them and I could get a bit of experience. I delivered internal training for my sales team for a couple of years. I went back to Alan again. I said, Alan, I've got this experience now. Can I be a trainer? And he said, no, because you need external experience. There's no point just teaching people in your team how to do something which you do every day. You don't have the experience to go in front of clients. And I thought there's no way for me to get this external experience because I'm working 5 days a week as a sales manager. So in 2011, I had a conversation with him, and I mentioned that I was thinking of leaving because I wanted to become a trainer. And he was very flexible, and he said, "Well, don't leave? Why don't you drop down to 4 days a week? Then you can spend the other day a week going getting some of that external experience." So that's what I did, and I then decided to set up my business to give me something to do for that one day a week and begin to get that experience myself. And I couldn't find training. I didn't have the experience to do what I wanted to at the time, so I began my life as a Microsoft Excel trainer for one of our sister companies, but delivered externally, and that was my way into training then. So the inspiration to do it was to be able to get some of this experience to come and deliver it for my current employer originally.
I love that story, and it sounds to me like you were kind of quite determined to be a trainer, you
Mm.
know, like really, and you really kind of, took all the sort of different actions to kind of to make that happen, really. So, you know,
Took a while
hats off. No, but but you didn't give up,
though.
hats off
No, I
to you
didn't.
there, hats off to you there. And then what a lovely kind of entry into the freelance trainer world, because you had that sort of, I guess, security of your job, 4 days a week, and then this other day where you could start to think about creating your own business. Because I think, that's one of the difficulties that people face, isn't it, when they set up on their own? They're just sort of suddenly they're having to go in, and they're worried about getting clients and paying the mortgage and all that stuff when they've sort of come from a corporate job. But you kind of had a nice sort of way in by the sounds of it.
Yeah, there was no cliff edge. And then as time went on, I had another conversation with him and I dropped down from 4 days a week to 3 days a week.
Uh,
And then what finally gave me the push was when he announced he was retiring. And he said, now I've met the person who's coming in after me. Not sure he'll be so flexible.
yeah,
He wants to speak to you before he joins. And I had a phone call with this other chap, and he said, Neil, hey, you're 3 days a week. Really like you to be 5 days a week. And that for me was the catalyst for then
yeah.
handing in my notice, which I did. He'd been in the job for a week, and I handed in my notice. I felt a bit bad. But I thought that was kind of my now or never time. I thought either I'm going to go back to 5 days, and then I'd lose all my clients, and I would then have that cliff edge at some point in the future.
And most people do have that. They have that catalyst, that sort of thing that gives them the final push, whether it be redundancy or, in my case, relocation, or in your case, the fact that you could no longer, you didn't have these sort of days that you could devote to your business. Um,
Mhm.
so all those years ago, you're now, you set up your own business. You're devoting 5 days a week to it now, as opposed to one day or 2 days. What how did you feel about that? And what were some of your challenges as you were setting about creating this business?
I would say some of the challenges early on were, and this sounds wrong, but it's true, was motivation, because I was still doing 4 days a week with a paid job and a salary and that sort of thing. It
Yeah,
was very easy to take that one day off a week, and it varied each week which day I took off. It's very easy to think, let's go out for the afternoon with my wife, who also worked part time, or to go and do something around the house or something like that. And because I always had this huge big safety net, it didn't really matter. So I got prompted by another couple of people in my industry to go and take it a bit more seriously after I've been doing it for a couple of years, and recognized if I didn't take advantage of this kind of luxury which I had, at the time, then at some point it might not happen. So I did struggle with motivation early on. And then another challenge, which was quite big early on, was LinkedIn, because one of the rules that he did set me was he didn't want me going and publicizing me over LinkedIn, because he was doing me a favor and I was an employee of them and so on. So I couldn't put on LinkedIn that I was a trainer and so on. And sometimes I would speak to people and they said, well, I've looked you up on LinkedIn and you don't do what you say you do. So that was challenging for a
Yeah.
while as well.
Yeah, and that is one of the difficulties when you're in this sort of halfway house, isn't it? That
Mm.
you can't quite sort of tie your colours to the mast and say, "Hey, here I am, I'm available for work," type of
Yeah.
thing. So, but presumably that you didn't have any, or you might have done, have any challenges around selling and marketing, and because let's face it, that always seems to be certainly everybody that I've worked with over the years and speak to, and one of the reasons I set up this business, that does seem to be any trainer's biggest challenge is getting clients and getting business, because they don't like the selling, marketing, or don't know how to do it. But presumably in your case, it was a bit different, or was it?
No, I would say it was a bit different, because I certainly my first job, um, when I first left university, was quite a hardcore cold calling type job. I was working for an energy broker selling negotiation services to large businesses. And we had no marketing department, and the only way we could do the job was to pick up the phone 70 or 80 calls a day and just deal with the rejection. So that's never bothered me. And I know from trainer talk and talking to other people in the community that people don't like the rejection. They don't like the idea of flying their own flag and telling people how great they are and so on. But that's never been an issue for me. And I would say the sales part's never been hard. As a sales trainer, though, you are competing against other salespeople for business.
Yeah,
So although I'm quite happy to do sales, so are my competitors. And sometimes I find myself in the situation where I'm competing against maybe a big player in the industry, who've got like a dedicated sales team. And although I'm quite happy to do the sales, I don't have 5 days a week to do it, because I've got 5 days a week in the training, or 4 days a week in the training room. So it's there's a bit more competition in the conversations that you have as a sales trainer than there would be maybe if you were health and safety or something like that, because you are competing against either other salespeople or dedicated sales
yeah,
teams. But no, I've never had a problem particularly winning business. I did for a while. I was trying to do, the show, and I was trying to do everything. 5 years ago, I was saying, well, I can do sales, I can do project management, I can do Microsoft Excel, I can do leadership, presentation skills, negotiations, all those things. And then you told me to niche. Um,
yeah,
and it did become massively easier at that point.
yeah,
And it was only after we had that conversation years ago that I tried to think, what is my niche? Because there's thousands of sales trainers, and there's thousands of project management trainers, and thousands of Excel trainers. I mean, at one point, I even had on my sales training website, I had a button say, if you want Microsoft Excel, click here. I mean, it's stupid thinking back. Um, but it was then that I realized that I am fairly unique in having this dual background of sales and project management, and what it means to bring those together. And from that point, I stopped chasing a lot of business, because I thought it's hard for me to differentiate myself from my competitors. And I started going after particular sort of business, people who've got particularly complex sales or solution-based, quite sort of fluffy stuff, rather than something concrete which they're selling. I started tracing that business and using as my USPs, my unique selling points, my shared background in those two areas to make it more relevant.
yeah. So you said something really important there, which is about when I decided to niche and stop being all things to all people, it
Mm.
suddenly became so much easier. So, so what became so much easier, and why?
A number of things. I think there was a barrier to it, which was my mindset, which was if you niche, you cut out a lot of potential opportunities. And when I first started doing it, I remember taking the Excel button off my sales training page and thinking, well, what about all the people who want Excel training? There's other people who do that, probably do it better than me.
Yeah,
Um, what became easier was having conversations with people and making it relevant. So if you are one of 100 players in your market and you can't really differentiate yourself from them, then your conversations are kind of, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, please work with me. Please, please, I'd really like to work with you. Whereas if you've got something that makes you different from everyone else, you can say, you should work with me and this is why it will benefit you. So it's less like a charitable ask and more like a strong business decision you're asking people to make. It helped me to cut out the the outreach to a number of types of companies. So let's say you work for, I don't know, an IT hardware reseller. If you come to me now and say, Neil, I found you on LinkedIn or online or something. I'd like some training for my sales dream. I'm not going to send you away. I'll do it. It will be fine and I'll do a good job. But I wouldn't actively go and pursue that sort of
Yeah.
business because I know it would be hard to differentiate myself. And another thing that became easier is identifying what my target market is and then being able to have, rather than 50,000 companies I could go after, maybe 700 or 800 within there, which gives me a lot more time to focus and get the messaging right for different people and so on.
Yeah. So it sounds to me it saves you a lot of time, when you describe it that way, and you're kind of much more focused. And do you find that people kind of come to you, they find you more easily because they're looking for a specific type of training that only you can do?
I don't particularly find that people find me more easily, like unprompted, because still I'm competing against the big players on Google rankings and that sort of thing. But what I find a lot is that people find me because they get recommended to me because Neil is the specialist. And that the first time that hit home was back during COVID. Somebody sent me a message on LinkedIn and said, I'm looking for someone to come and implement sales methodology in our business. And I want this specific one. It's called Medic. And I've been told by 3 people I've asked already that you are the person to speak to. So it's not that I got known particularly in my target market, but I've got known in my industry as somebody who can specialize in something which is quite sort of big and complex and requires quite a lot of work and diligence to put something in properly. I think there are people in my industry who think, I quite like doing the training bit, but Neil's good at this bit as well. And then you get recommended. And I've won lots of business, more than half of my business, from personal recommendation from people who know what my niche is. And because again, I think I'm not going to say I'm unique, but I'm pretty unique having this dual background in sales and strategic project management. You get known for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And if you're messaging out to people, and when I say out to people, I mean when I bump into people at conferences or things like that, what do you do? Well, I do this, and this is why it's good. Then they remember you, and then they pass people your way.
Yeah. If you give them a list of 10 different things, they're not going to remember any of those,
Yeah.
And then when people remember you, that's what happens. They tell other people about you, or if they get asked, then you're the first person that comes into their mind. All right, so you talked about 50% of your business comes from referrals. Where does the other 50% come from?
LinkedIn and picking up the phone.
Yeah.
So I have a
cold
LinkedIn
calling.
navigator.
When you say picking up the phone, does it cold call? Yeah.
Yeah, happy to. Well, we don't call it cold calling in 2025. We call it targeted outreach.
Okay, sorry.
But yeah, cold calling. Let's call it. It's not picking up the phone book and working through from A to Z. It's as I said just now, it's identifying who your target market is. Looking over, if I were to go on LinkedIn now, I would probably the first thing I would do would be to look at some job titles, and company size would be the first things I would look at, and then geography would be in there too. If they're based in the UK, that just makes everything a bit easier. But then within that, I'll then look through and think, what work have I done recently in these industries? So recently, I've been doing some interesting work with stockbrokers in Amsterdam, and I've been doing some work with equipment manufacturers, which isn't something I've particularly done much of in the past. And I've always done work with big consultancies. So I look for people within my LinkedIn search who are in an industry I've been working with in the last 3 months, just because the things that they care about are fresher in my mind. And I can pick up the phone and I'm not just saying, hi, I'm a sales trainer, do you want it? I've got real life challenges, which I think of, and then I go and mention that to people. But I do that quite a deliberate way. So when I'm training people, of course, what happens during the course is what sort of challenges do you have in your business and do your clients have? I write them down. Like during the training course, I literally have a piece of paper on the table in front of me. I have a pen. Someone says challenges, and I write it down. And if people ask what you're doing, I tell them. So, well, I'm going to be proactive and find new business. This is helping me. What are you going to be proactive? And then they can see that I'm not training as an academic. I'm training as somebody who still picks up the phone and makes cold calls. But if I work with you and you say, well, my current challenge is this, I can then go to other people in your industry and say, I understand this is a bit of an issue at the moment, and probably half the time people say yes, it is, and then that's your way.
In, isn't it? Yeah, ears prick up, you know.
Yeah, and because I've mentioned something that they wouldn't necessarily expect someone outside of their industry to be aware of.
Yeah.
So, for example, in air conditioning manufacturing, I'm doing a lot of work at the moment. There's constant changes coming from the government on green targets and that sort of thing. Because I'm mentioning something which only an insider in the industry would really know about, it gives me some credibility compared to the people who are saying, we're a big sales trainer, do you want some training? I'm talking about something which is in their world. But because I'm getting it from other clients, I'm not doing loads of research and stuff. I'm just picking up what people are caring about at the moment, writing it down, and then using it.
Yeah. Wonderful. I mean, do you find people are nice to you when you call them up? Because some people get put off by making calls to people they don't know, but what's your experience in general of it?
No, people are nice to me. I mean, there are plenty of people that, so I don't think other trainers should get discouraged when they get a no. I would say 90% of the time, well, let's be realistic. 90% of the time I pick up the phone to someone, I don't get an answer. People are busy, or it goes to voicemail, or reception won't put you through, or so on. That's not even rejection. That's just I've not had any interaction with those sorts of fact of life. Yeah. Of the other people I speak to, probably the people I get through to, 70% of them will say no for whatever reason. I'm not interested at the moment, or we've just had some training, or there's too much else going on. That's fine, but it's not you're a horrible person for picking up the phone to me in the middle of my day. Don't ever call me again. It's another fact of life. And I'm not the person who's then going to go and spam them with calls every day for a fortnight. I'll ping them a quick email to thank them for taking my call, and I'll try them again in 3 months or something like that. But it's very rare that I would get what I would call an overtly negative reaction. I can only think of one in the last year, probably, which was I won't name drop the company, but they're fairly big, and they said we don't take cold calls. I said, oh, sorry, this was only reception. I said, oh, sorry about that. We've signed up to the business telephone preference service. You shouldn't even have called us. Sorry. Bye.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have name dropped. Oh yeah, I work for one of my major competitors. But no, I get it from my experience as a junior salesperson years ago that it's intimidating to do. And that my first job, I was one of 8 people who were recruited at the same time. And after 6 months, there were only 2 of us left. Some people just don't like doing it, but it's a mindset thing. So, thing is, if I'm cold calling you, you're not my mum, you're not my wife, you're not my best friend, you're not like the parent of someone at my daughter's school. You're somebody I don't know, and you're somebody I will never speak to again. And so what? If you say no, or even if you get a bit annoyed, don't bother me. I've not damaged a relationship with anyone because I don't have a relationship with that person. It's just like passing someone in the street.
Yeah, I love that. That's just a really great way of framing it, because people should, as you said, people shouldn't get discouraged. And sometimes it's even if it's a no, it doesn't mean to say it's a no for now. It might not be a no forever, you know. So, and what you've done by having that conversation, just making that person know you exist, and they didn't know that you existed before, and something might come of it, some of it might not. So
Yeah.
I love that. All right, so you talked to me about your business. Let's talk a little bit about Trainer Talk, because you've been a member for a good few years now, and in fact, you're one of our lovely Trainer Talk local leaders. You're a Trainer Talk local leader for Oxford. So
and online.
And online, yeah.
And online.
Oxford and online, yeah, which is a new way that we're going to be doing it this year for your group. So, what made you decide to join Trainer Talk all those years ago, if you can remember?
I can remember. So I was looking for work and I found your associate alert
Mm,
service
yeah.
and I subscribed to that for probably 3 years.
2 years, yeah, yeah.
And I got some good associate work which really helped me to start up my
Mm,
business. Um, but then I began to think I was relying too much on associate work and not finding my own real clients.
mm.
And at that time, you ran, and you have to forgive me, I forget what the course was called,
How
but
to create a successful and profitable
the
training
one.
business.
That's the one. So I decided to attend that, and I
Yeah.
did. And it was, I don't know, was it 5 or 6 parts, something like
Six
that, I think,
weeks, yeah.
six
Yeah.
weeks. And um, I wasn't a member of Trainer Talk then. I was just doing the
Yeah.
associate alerts, and you told me to unsubscribe from your associate alerts, which
Yeah.
saved me 10 quid a month. Yeah, that was worth doing.
Yeah.
But also, you said you sound like somebody who needs to find your own clients and build your business. So you said, why don't you join Trainer Talk properly? And I did.
And
Um,
you did.
I,
And you
I will I will
yeah,
fully credit that for making big leap forward in what I did. It was a good decision.
fantastic.
Not I think associate work is very good for people, particularly if people are very reticent to go and find their own business.
Yeah.
And people like I was at the time who are just early on in their career and you just need some quick money coming in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for me, my plan was always to go and run my own business
Yeah.
with direct clients, which I find a bit more satisfying.
Yeah, yeah. And everyone's different. For some people, they
Mm.
just like running the associate model for whatever reason. Maybe they don't like so much of the selling, marketing, or maybe it's, personal circumstances, and, we're all different. And some people
And
do,
I still do little bits of associate work
yeah,
because it,
people do
it gets me
both.
things which I couldn't do elsewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah, some of these things I've cut out by niching, like presentation skills, things like that. Someone says, Neil, can you do a presentation skills for one of my clients? Like, yeah, okay, that'll be fun.
yeah, yeah,
Or it gets you in front of the sort of client you wouldn't normally get in front of, which is interesting. I've not completely dropped the associate work. It's probably 20% of what I do, and I enjoy the ease of just turning up on the day, doing it, and going home, but
yeah,
also the variety that it gives as
yeah,
well.
yeah. Brilliant. So, that was the gave you the impetus to join Trainer Talk all those years ago, and you're still with us, which is amazing. As I've said, you're a Trainer Talk local leader. Why are you still in our amazing community? What's the biggest benefit that you get from being part of it?
So I would say one thing is just knowing that I'm not on my own,
Yeah,
because having worked for, I don't know, whatever it was, 17, 18 years working for businesses and almost always big businesses with many, many colleagues. One thing that I felt after I quit is that I felt a little bit out on a limb. I was a small fish in a very big pond with bigger players who had networks and internal departments who could think about products and that sort of thing. And just knowing that there are other people to bounce ideas off and to get different people's takes on what I do, I find very helpful. So even if I'm going through a period where I don't interact with people in Trainer Talk much because I am too busy or something like that, knowing they're there is very helpful. And like just the
yeah,
other day, someone had a moan at me the other day that I didn't get on long enough for lunch breaks. So I popped a question on the Trainer Talk LinkedIn group and got 3 or 4 people responding with what they do, and it was interesting to see what other people do for their lunch breaks and
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
just error checking what
yeah,
I do with people who might be training a completely different subject, but
yeah,
they're in the same position. They've still got a room with 20 people in it who are hungry at the middle of the day.
yeah, yeah. So what would you say to somebody, because who might be watching this video and is kind of thinking about joining Trainer Talk, they'd heard of it, they maybe got some emails and they're like, oh, I'm not really sure what it, for whatever reason, what would you say to them for someone considering joining?
Putting my sales hat on, I would say it will pay for itself very, very quickly.
Mm,
So I joined Trainer Talk. I guess it must have been just before COVID came along. I
yeah,
think maybe 6 months before COVID, something like that. And during those lockdowns, I have been doing virtual training for many years, and I got known in the trainer talk community as kind of an expert voice on virtual training.
Did I remember those days? Yeah.
Yeah, and some people, a couple of people passed some business my way, either to help them out or they said, I've got a client who needs to learn more about virtual training. The fee I paid for Trainer Talk paid for itself
Yeah.
many times over, just because you have a network and there will be people who know what you do and they know what they do and they realize there's not a good match for them, but there's a good match for someone else. Business gets passed around. So putting my hard-nosed sales hat on, it's a good ROI.
Yeah.
But I would say on the softer side of it, it's just a group of very helpful people who, if you're stuck or you've got a question, um, they will have the answers to it. They will talk through things. They will give you advice. One thing I like about Trainer Talk Local is you've got a small group of people in a room, and you can all share what's going on in your business, and then people will share their thoughts. And it's as a freelance trainer, it's kind of the only opportunity you have to get an external view on what you're doing. If you're one person in a company of 1,000, you've got plenty of people who will give you their feedback. But when it's just you, it's nice to have an external perspective from people who kind of know what your challenges are, but from a different point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really nice to get that different perspective from people who actually understand, what because we've all got similar challenges, in our training businesses.
Yeah. You also, let's throw another one in there. If you join Trainer Talk, you will see people who, on that journey to
Yeah.
running a successful trainer business, there will be people who are behind you in that journey, who
Yes.
you feel that you can add input to them, which is nice, knowing that you're helping out somebody who might be, I don't know, 3 years behind where you are. But you'll also see people who are ahead of you in that journey, who, A, they'll give you advice, but also it's just knowing that if they can do it, so can I.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
And that
something
is
is
so interesting
achievable.
because when I talked to Angela the other day, Angela Mitchell, I don't know if you've seen that video yet, but she basically almost said exactly the same thing about
Mm,
enjoying people at different stages of the journey,
mm,
and just knowing that you could sort of you have got a part to play in all of those stages of the journey, with
mhm,
helping and supporting other people. So yeah,
mm.
I love that. All right, okay, so final question. How can people find out more about you, Neil?
Well, you could find me on LinkedIn. There are two Neil Shorneys on LinkedIn.
No, there's
I
only
am
one Neil
not.
Shorney.
There's two, but I'm not the Australian anaesthetist. You don't want to be contacting the wrong person. I'm the other Neil Shorney. Um, his LinkedIn is the way most people find me, or through my website, navanta.com,
Yeah,
NAVANTER.com. But if someone is watching this who is a trainer and wants a bit of mentoring or a few thoughts, particularly if you're training in my industry or in project management, then I'm always happy to give some pointers and listen to what they have to say. So yeah, I'm more than happy for people
yeah,
to find me online, ping me a message,
yeah,
and get in
yeah.
touch.
Absolutely, or go to one of Neil's Trainer Talk locals, because they're either in Oxford face to face, or we're going to be doing them online this year. So it doesn't matter where you're based. And you've got
Mhm.
a couple of really good topics this year, haven't you, Neil? So
So we've got, I think it's 21st of May, but don't quote me on that, is how to, and it's not for everyone, how to break free of associate work. And I'm not saying that we've talked about it already, associate
yeah,
work
yeah,
is a
yeah.
bad thing, but as I said, I felt too reliant on it.
Yes,
And of
yeah,
course, when COVID came along, associate work takes a downturn, you feel out of control of your own destiny because you are reliant on other people's business success.
yeah,
So it's not about how to get rid of it completely, but it's about how to get balance so that
yeah,
you feel you are more responsible the direction or
yeah,
the income. Let's get
yeah,
numbers, the
yeah,
revenue that you're getting. So yeah, how to maybe get the mindset to go and find your own clients, and also how to manage the work you do with some of these associate providers so that you don't find yourself overcommitting to one organization and putting all your eggs in one
yeah,
basket. So that's the one in May, and I think it'll be an interesting topic to
yeah.
talk through.
Brilliant. Look forward to it. All right, then. Well, thank you so much, Neil. Thank you for your
Thank
time
you.
this afternoon. Always a joy to spend time with you, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye
Thanks,
now.
Sharon. Bye bye.